Series.
Filthy hobbitses, they stole it from us.
Would it be accurate to say your ADD kicks in?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the To Be Read podcast. I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Julie.
And today we are talking all about the books that we've read this year and our hopefuls for the rest of the year. This is kind of like our 3/4 of the way checkpoint to see if we've met like reading goals, see what the vibe is going into the holiday season.
Reading roundup, baby.
Was done and dusted like that.
No.
Oh, I really kind of want to read that because I want to see how Western it is.
Oh, the only thing that was like really like cowboyish about it was like him calling her sugar and like darling and like the INs instead of the INGs. But it was like, it was more of like small town, and she did like rodeo and stuff. So, but it wasn't like
on a ranch or something.
Yeah.
Oh, well then I'm not reading it.
Why? It's
if
not
it's
like
not
it's
true
not like a
to
Western.
story. Did you have goals like last year? Like, did you have any reading goals? Like, was it just numbers? Was it like type styles?
So I live and die by Goodreads, and I always set my like reading goal on there. So for like the last 5 or 6 years, I've set a reading goal. I think my goal last year was 75, and I think I read 82. So I think I set my goal for 80 this year, but I've been like...
You're there.
Way higher than I expected to be. So I bumped it up to 90, and I'm still very ahead of that goal.
So it's numbers.
Yes, I set a number goal.
My reading goal going into this year was to read outside of the fantasy genre, or like to read more outside of the fantasy genre.
Look at you. I think
I did.
helped. I think I helped with that.
Actually, you 100% did, because there's a lot of books that I would not have read otherwise.
I got you. I got you, girl.
I got you.
Yeah, it's been a pretty big reading year so far.
I see that.
It just kind of keeps getting better and better as the years go by. I feel like I'm a little more diverse in my reading.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree.
Jumped into fantasy, but I'm still just kind of like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. That's kind of my vibe.
Do you think being a mood reader plays into that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I've never really had like a set niche that I loved. When I had babies, it was like contemporary romance, like fluffy romance. That was my go-to because it was just like the perfect escape. But now I'm like, I want some of this and I want some of this, and it's been so fun.
I love that for you.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing me to fantasy.
Thanks for bringing me out of fantasy a little bit.
Just balance each other out.
I know. Every year we're just gonna get better and better. With the 90 books that you're going to read this year, paint me a picture of what your ideal setup is.
Okay.
What puts you in the mood, Miss Mood Reader?
Let me first off, what time of day?
Whatever tickles your fancy.
Okay. I'll give you like a daily look at my reading. I wake up, and before I get out of bed, I read like a chapter. I grab my Kindle and I read like a chapter. I just started doing this like a week ago, and I've been like in heaven. It's so great. Start my day off with like a chapter of my book. And then I get moving with my day. Depending on what I have going, I might read a lot during the day or I might not. I typically do that either in a reclining chair. That's my husband's favorite, or my pluffle, or on the couch upstairs. Not specific.
Okay.
But I'll just kind of read all over.
A lounge reader.
A lounge reader, for sure. Now, if we're going for like ultimate vibes, this is the setup. Dark room. Required. I love a dark room. Preferably a cold room. We're going to be dark room, cold room. In my pluffle. If I'm reading like a physical book, reading light. Snacks, ice cold water, blankie.
Around the neck, reading light.
Yes.
Not overhead.
Not overhead. It's a neck one so that you can like move the heads around and stuff.
Okay.
Get the right lighting. Then we're in the pluffle. We're in the human dog bed with a blanket. Oh, and the background music. I love having music on when I read. I know that's not your preferred. We find a nice balance when we do this together. But I love having like instrumental music on. Maybe it's AirPods for like pure ambiance and no other noise. Sometimes it's just on the TV, but it has to be dark. That's my requirement.
Okay.
What about you?
It depends on the time of year. In the summer, I love going outside and having, like, we have like the solo stove. And so I love like a fire pit situation in reading with the crickets, and we have like frogs out by my house and just hear like that sound. So it's not that I'm opposed to sound per se. It's just like music. I'm always like, ooh, this is a wonderful sonata, or, you know, like as one does.
It gets you sidetracked.
Yeah, I like that with like my Kindle, because you can't read in the dark, like an actual like physical book, unless you have a light.
Unless you have a neck light.
So, and I don't love the neck lights unless I have to. And actually, I don't do a neck light. I do the overhead light. A lot of this depends on my dog is obsessed with shadows. So if I have that light on, he literally like all night, he'll lick the wall, he'll lick the shadow, he'll like nip at it. It's crazy.
Not the licking the wall.
So that is what my summer like vibes that I like. I only read pretty much specifically at night. I might do an audiobook through the day if I can at work, but a lot of times just it's hard to be creative while ingesting information. I honestly take my phone and like lay on my pillow and I do the side with my phone, and I haven't found a better way to do it. Even like my tablet or Kindle, it's just better on the phone if I'm like laying in my bed. And again, I really only read after like 8, 9 o'clock at night. If I can read earlier, like if I get my daughter down earlier or something, I'll get like a physical book or the light or something. So, but it's all usually either in bed or like I have recently gotten a pluffle. That's nice. However, I have fallen asleep. That thing like is like a lullaby.
It is.
It just sings me right
just
to
like
sleep.
cradles you so perfectly that you just feel like you're in the womb.
You know what it reminds me of? Those Docatots.
Yeah, it's a Docatot for adults.
It's an adult Docatot.
It's a squishier Docatot.
It's a Doca adult.
Doc adult.
A doc adult.
And it's a safe sleep.
Yes.
Safe sleep.
I really like the arms that hold the tablet, and you get the clicker so you don't even have to move. You just like sit in
I
your
fall
little
asleep immediately if I have a clicker.
Maybe that's what it is.
It's the clicker,
It's
man.
the clicker, because you don't have to move at all.
Yeah, there's no movement.
That is my ideal setup, depending.
I should say I also fall asleep reading every single night. I take a book into bed. And especially if it's my Kindle, I'll read until I'm like real dozy. But I have read before bed every night for over a year now. I've not missed a day.
I just recently hit 365 days in my Kindle, which I've been trying for years, but you know, life just happens. And I hope any listener out there says to themselves, I only read one book a month. Like, how can I keep up with the book talk community, with the book world? You read your one book a month. You probably retain it much more than I retain.
And you're still a reader. If you're picking up a book and reading it, you're a reader.
Yeah.
You don't have to read 12 books a month or whatever to be a reader.
That's something very daunting that I'm noticing as I'm like on social media more because of the podcast. It's very easy to get swept up in what other people are doing and what works well for them. Oh my gosh, they just recommended like 12 books for last month. I read 4 and thought I was doing good. So just count your own wins. They don't have to be anyone else's wins.
Well, and the thing that I always have to remember too is like, even though I'm home all day and I do read a lot of books in a month, there are people that like, it's their job. It's their job to read all day.
You need to apply for that job. You'd be so good at that job.
Yeah, but I'm still a kid. I'm still a mom, you know?
Yeah.
I got little children to take care of. I still read a significant amount. I'm just saying, like, it's easy to compare yourself to people, but then like that's how they make their living, is by being a bookfluencer.
Oh yeah, they don't have a job.
Yeah, that's their
full-time
job.
It is also okay not to read.
Yeah. I've noticed that when I was just like putting my list together of just like, it's a roller coaster. Like some months is a lot of reading and some months it's not as much. In the year of our Lord, 2024, I have read 73 books.
Wow, that
My highest reading month was July. I read 12 books in July. Oof. Other than that, I'm kind of averaging 8 books a month, which feels significant and
2 books a week.
definitely had some winners, had some not winners. But overall, it's been like a fun reading year. There's been some goodies in there. I finished up my SJM journey, which was really nice. Started the year on a high with One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. Technically, I read One Dark Window in 2023.
Oh, but like going in.
Yeah, but Two Twisted Crowns, I loved that duology.
That is a great duology.
The magic system is elite. It is just like So cool, so fresh, so new.
Oh, and not overly complicated.
No, very simple. And it's just like the perfect blend of like darkness without a lot of like weight.
There's gothic vibes without the heaviness of torture and trauma and like a lot of things that sometimes go hand in hand with those.
There's still some violence, but it was never like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What just happened? So I loved that one. I read one shortly after that I did not love. And by shortly after, I mean immediately after I finished Two Twisted Crowns. I read Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. And all I have to say is,
but to just Ruthless Vows.
yeah, I think my feelings of Ruthless Vows are tainting how I feel about Divine Rivals because I was just so disappointed by that second book. And most people that I talk to love it. And I love that for you, but I was not happy.
I didn't like it either. And
I thought the first one was cute, but it was also just like, where exactly are we? I had so many questions. So that one wasn't a win for me.
what that duology did well is combining fantasy with a historical fiction.
There's a book called Lovely War that reminded me a lot of it. And I loved Lovely War.
Okay.
It mixed kind of like the Greek gods and goddesses. Like they were telling the story and it took place in like World War II.
Oh, interesting.
And I liked that one more. And I think that might have also kind of affected how I felt about it. Those were like the highlights of January. I did read, I think it's the 7th book in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series, which is a middle grade fiction series. My niece is obsessed with it. And so I've slowly been reading them and it's been good.
Aww.
So like if you've got children or
Kinda like
you
the
just need some lightness in your life, Keeper of the Lost Cities is a fantastic
Like Percy
series.
Jackson vibes or like age range. Cool.
Yeah. So that was my January. What about your January?
My January. Okay, I'm so glad that this was the year that you had such a fun reading year. I don't know if I'd say that for me, and it's because the vast amount of rereads I have done.
You have reread a lot.
And I love rereading, and this year kind of made me not love it. And it's because I reread, for any listener who's maybe new to this podcast, I read when a new book comes out, I will read the books before. So what I really should do is wait till the last one and then read all of them. And it's so I could keep the excitement up. I can remember things. So and for the majority of the part, I love doing that. But this year, also buddy reading, most of the books that we buddy read, I had already read. Like, I just got really sick of rereading this year. And so that's kind of my goal going forward, is not rereading for the rest of the year as much as possible, which sucks because there's a couple of really awesome like things that are coming out. But
do you think you'll get back into rereading, or do you think maybe your ways will change from here on out because of how this year has been?
Oh, I will always be a rereader because I will forget. You know what I mean? Like,
but with every single series, do you think you'll keep rereading for every single series?
I actually tried recently not to reread. I had read Assistant to the Villain last year, and I was like, okay, I picked up Apprentice to the Villain, and I didn't remember anything. And I was like, so I went back and I read it, reread Assistant to the Villain, read Apprentice to the Villain.
Disappointed
in that. Spoiler alert. So in January, I told a friend of mine about the Savage Land series, it was a great reread. It is post-apocalyptic fantasy vibes in the Czech Republic, and it's really cool. It is a little spicy for those into that, and she really liked it, and she started talking to me about it, and I was like, I don't remember this and that, and so I went back and reread it so we could talk about it, and that's probably why we reread a lot of books. And then Crescent City 1 and 2 to get ready for at the very end of the month was Crescent City 3, and I started that at the beginning of February. So those were my highlights in January.
Good month.
It was a good month.
Were those all rereads in January then?
Yup.
Wow.
Yep. And the Savage Land series, I think, is 6 books. So 6, 7, 8 books that month.
Look at you.
I know.
All right. February was kind of a cool month. I had some really good reads and a couple rereads. But we started with House of Flame and Shadow. Read that one. I reread ACOTAR and A Court of Mist and Fury, and those were nice. But the highlights were I read The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which just made me feel like
Did you finish that?
bad A. Yeah.
Oh.
It was so good. It was so good.
Okay.
Those Those books are so dense and so long, but man, he is a master. He's a master. And so that was a highlight because that just felt like a big accomplishment. Like that book's like 1,000 pages.
Yeah. I always look at that book in bookstores and I'm like, one day.
So that was a big accomplishment. And then Bones, which I'll never stop talking about Bones. But also probably the highlight of the month was Manacled. The birth of my Hermione era, which I'm still in today and not leaving anytime soon.
They've got to be about out.
You have no idea.
Oh my
It is
gosh.
insane. But Manacled changed my life and my brain chemistry forever. So that was February.
My February, Crescent City 3. I reread Akatar, Akamath, Akawar, Manacled. We read that together, kind of. Dial A for Aunties because I needed something like
Light after
Manacled. And then we went into The Fury, which was a book club read. Wasn't for me, but I think some people like it. Bones, obviously. Like, just that was top 3 favorite for sure of the year. Loved Bones. A Fate Inked in Blood, which was just like a nice little pick me up afterwards. I went back to my roots a little bit.
What a time that one was. I want to put a quick plug in here of like, I don't know if I did Hermione correctly because I saw once that like jumping in and reading Manacled first is kind of like the craziest thing you could possibly do when you're dipping your toes into Hermione. That's how we did it.
That is how we did it.
But if you have a deep love for Harry Potter and just like the lore and the world, it's good. It's good. It's worth a read. We've mentioned it, but I haven't like dived in just like, oh my goodness, this book means the world to me. I'll be rereading it.
Why do you think that book resonated so well with you?
One of my favorite things about that book is that it took a series that I love so much and is made for children, and it grew up. It grew up with me. And I just feel like seeing that world from an adult perspective and having more adult things happen, it was just like, wow, this is so cool. This is incredible. And the author who actually got a publishing deal, SenLinYu's work is incredible. And I'll read anything they write because I just feel like her depth of knowledge about the world of Harry Potter, I was just like, did you call up JK? Like, were you just chatting away
with JK Rowling? I liked Manacled, but I don't think I like it as much as you do. And I will not be rereading it. And a lot of it was because it was Hermione.
Well, you had a hard time splitting your brain and saying like, okay, this is not canon. Like these are not the canon characters.
Right.
Because Manacled is an alternate universe.
I will give Hermione a couple more chances because for the reasons you like it are the reasons I don't.
That's so funny.
And it's because I didn't like that it grew up with me. I want it to stay in its box. Stay in your lane.
I can respect that.
But I can respect other people for liking it.
Yeah.
You know, I do think it was good writing. I didn't love, and I think maybe the biggest thing that I didn't love about that book is it was very much a copycat of Handmaid's Tale.
It is so much more than a Handmaid's Tale. The first 25% is Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
But I feel like that book is so like misadvertised.
I mean, it's like on the cover. It's on all the covers.
But the biggest chunk of the book is not Handmaid's Tale.
And I will say that was the chunk that I liked.
Yeah. The flashbacks.
Yeah.
So good.
So that's why I think I might dip my toes into maybe the lighter, fluffier Hermione. I do have a hard time kind of being like, oh, Draco is not Tom Felton, because that is hard for my brain to accept. So we'll see what happens with it. But I don't think Manacled was...
It wasn't the one for you.
It wasn't
okay.
One. I liked it though. Like, I'm not going to say I didn't.
Yeah.
What was March for you?
March is when the Throne of Glass journey began. I also read A Fate Inked in Blood with You. I read A Court of Silver Flames, and then Serpent in the Wings of Night, and then I jumped into Throne of Glass. So the biggest thing of note was the Throne of Glass.
That was a reread for me. We read, I don't know where you got in your Throne of Glass journey, but I know I read Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, Assassin's Blade, and Queen of Shadows all that month.
I finished Queen of Shadows right in the beginning of April, according to my notes.
Finish before you?
I think you might have.
The world ended that day because Julie always finishes faster than I do. I read The Lost Bookshop, which is a nice little lit fic. It was super cute. It was recommended as a book club type of read, like not heavy. It was a little historical fiction with a little like sprinkle of fantasy in there. It was cute. When the Moon Hatched, that book, I have very hard feelings about in both ways. Like very good feelings.
Hard as in strong or like complicated?
Complicated.
Okay.
Because any book that has like a 10 to 15 page glossary at the beginning of it loses me immediately. Like,
that's hefty.
It is super hefty. It is super thick. It took me about 30% to get into, and it is so thick that's like 300 pages before I could really get into it. But once I was into it, I was so into it. And the world building in there is good, but it is so complicated. It is like this weird world that I would never, ever, ever dream up in my life, which is cool. So I will read the next book, but I need to reread that one. I need to reread When the Moon Hatched. I read Lessons in Chemistry. That's just like a great standard. Like,
that's a top 5 book for me.
It's so good.
It is incredibly good.
The whole premise of it is just amazing. And I like the fact that she names her dog 630. I'm not sure why.
It's the best.
Like the funniest little thing.
I highly recommend that one. I actually recommended that one to my mom and my sister, and they both read it and absolutely loved it.
It's a good one.
So that's a win for me. Woo woo.
Nice. And that was on your top, I don't know, what we sent each other a top 10?
Yeah,
and that was
in
on
my
your
top
list,
10.
So.
Yep.
Okay, April,
we finished Throne of Glass, which is a big moment. It was so good. I jumped into an advanced reader copy of How to Hide in Plain Sight, which the author Emma Noyes sent to me.
Ooh,
she wrote Guy's Girl, and she also has a fantasy trilogy called Sunken City, which I have not read yet, but I'm very intrigued by it. But I read this one. It's about the main character has OCD, and it's a mixture of that and a love story. She writes complex themes really well, a lot about mental health and stuff like that too. I absolutely loved it. By the time this episode drops, it will be out.
Okay.
So pick up a copy because that book was so good. And it was so raw. At times it was like hard to read because I have OCD, and to read about the struggle, it was just like, oh my goodness. So I hope that people pick it up, because I think it's also good for people that don't have OCD to read it and understand like that's what it's like. That's the internal turmoil and torture. So I read that one, and then I was kind of in a rom-com space. I read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, and I found myself in the minority, and I did not love it. It was a 3-star read for me. I was really excited about it because Abby Jimenez has some big winners for me, but that one just did not hit. The conflict was really hard for me to wrap my brain around. And then the resolution, I was just like, are you for real? Like, is this really happening? But then I read another Hermione, but I read Funny Story by Emily Henry, and that was a 5-star, like, top book of the year. I've read it twice this year.
Love that.
April was good. April was like a shift from Throne of Glass into like back into the contemporary space a little bit.
You kind of need a palate cleanser after Throne of Glass, because you can't read another fantasy, because it just nothing will measure up to what Throne of Glass is. So that makes sense to me. My April after Throne of Glass, I went into Bridge of Clay. Yeah, that was another top read for me this year. It was not my usual. It was a lit fic. Would you call it a lit fic? It hit all the places it should have after reading a fantasy book. Yeah. So loved that. I wanted, again, to try something out of my comfort zone. And this is when Bridgerton season, 4 was coming out. And I was like, I really should actually read a book if I'm going to watch the show. I read The Duke and I hated it. I would be on the team of there's a little bit of rapage happening.
Oh, there's 1000% rapage in that book.
It's such a great area because he's like, no, and he's inebriated.
He's drunk.
But then he goes, yes. So it should have been more clear either way, but it is gray enough that I would not have done that if I were Miss Daphne. So I did not like it, and I didn't proceed on with reading it, but I know a lot of people like it. So if that is for you, that's for you, and it's not for me, and that's okay. The Book of Azrael was a big winner for me. I loved this book. I liked Book of Azrael, and I loved the next one, which is The Throne of Broken Gods. I think Amber V. Nicole writes trauma and PTSD exquisitely. And it's a fantasy world. And to be honest, the fantasy world part is hard to follow in that, which I know you said that you didn't like about that book. But the way that she writes Diana, who is a bad character, she's the main character, but she's not
She's
good.
an antagonist, right?
Yeah. So the way that she writes her is just beautiful. And Sam Keel, which is kind of a weird name, but you know, I'll ignore it because he is so amazing. Anyway, I love it. That was great for me. That was maybe not a 5-star read because of the world building, but I will love it and recommend it till the day I die. I love that. And I can't wait to get into the third book. And then I ended on a low with Zodiac Academy, which was a reread.
The longest reread of your entire life. I'm sure there will come a time where I'm just like, you know what? Zodiac Academy.
I don't think you ever will.
I don't know.
I will take bets. I will take money bets.
But that was April, right?
So that was April going into, so I started Zodiac Academy, and then into May I read Zodiac Academy 2-7. I still stand by the fact that Lance Orion is amazing, but yeah, that was
your May?
May, along with Song of Achilles.
Yeah. So May was not it for me. I have learned this year that I experience delayed book hangovers. So I think I ride a high for a bit after I finish. So like I finished One of Glass and I was just like, yes. And I read like 5 more books. And then all of a sudden I was just like, what is life?
This isn't what I signed up for.
What have I done? So the month of May was Zodiac Academy 1, which I do not believe that the words bully and romance should ever go together. It's a crime.
I don't think I've ever read another one.
I just think it's a weird subgenre, but if that's your thing, go for it. It was weird. Or another Hermione. The highlight of May was The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. I got it in the Book of the Month box, and that book is so great. That's probably like my favorite Christina Lauren. A nice contemporary romance, fake marriage. They're on a private island with his family, trying to convince them that they're married, and the family, they're just like rich, awful people. But he's like salt of the earth. It's great.
This sounds like an Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah,
him and Jennifer Aniston,
kind of gives that,
or like Drew Barrymore.
Yeah,
that could totally be that.
I read Book of Azrael, and it like I cannot poop on that book because it was just a wrong place, wrong time. I was in a book hangover so bad, and like the world building is complex. So it just was not the right time, and I'll own that. Then I reread Air of Fire and Queen of Shadows through audiobook, which was so good, and Song of Achilles, which I don't know if I'll ever forget the ache in my chest that I felt after I read that book.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
A nice donkey kick to the chest.
Here, read this Here, read this book. It will destroy you.
It will hurt your chest.
Thank you.
So it's June? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in June, it was kind of an interesting month because I got sick. And when I get sick, and I was like sick, like I had a sinus infection. I was sick for a couple weeks. So I did a lot of rereading in June. Comfort reads, fluffy reads, all the things. So I started off with Powerless, which that book's like deceptively big. The words in it are so small. Kind of an interesting observation. Also, that's a book that I kind of have complicated feelings about. I don't want to poop on it.
Oh, I want to.
You want to poop on Powerless?
I want to poop
Let's
on
poop
Powerless.
on Powerless. Okay.
Powerless is everything the internet says it is. It is full of cash grabs. It's full of clout. It's full of tropes. And the in-between is not great. And if it did not have the guy who is the audiobook narrator, if it did not have the guy, what is his name? Chase something or other. If it did not have him, people would not have liked it as much.
Ooh.
Hot take. Because he does have a sexy voice. I'll give him that.
His voice is fantastic.
It's
and
dreamy.
yes, that book hits like every single box that you could possibly check on like a fantasy romance with tension but no spice. But it also like got into the realm of plagiarism.
Yep.
A little bit.
Yep.
Which is kind of a wild world to me. It lacks depth. Mm-hmm. It is just like...
It's surface value, and that's what makes me think it was a surface level grab from a novice writer. I said what
She said what she said, ladies and gentlemen.
I was thinking today about how writers and authors used to be so old because they, could write a book in their older age, not in their younger age. Now everyone's doing it as they're younger, but they don't have a lot of the right nuances, the right skill level to write a book. Now this is where editors come in, stuff like that. It seemed like whoever picked this up, I don't recall the publisher of Powerless, saw all of the little pieces that everyone likes and that it would make money, not the fact that it was a good book.
I think it's Simon and Schuster.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is Simon and Schuster.
In
but
my
I
opinion.
think the book world has changed.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't think people value literary masterpieces.
I think you can still find those.
Oh, yeah.
But
absolutely.
what's going to be pushed and what's going to be marketed is what's going to make money. And it's going to be light, fluffy, airy reads, which are great. And they have they have a place. Like Powerless is, I enjoyed it for its light fluffiness, but it's not anything that I haven't read before.
Exactly.
I mean, it just goes to prove that I can read the same formula over and over again and be entertained.
I didn't like Kai as much as the rest of the world did because everything he said was like, no one would say that. Absolutely no one would say that. No one would think that. He doesn't have a fault to him other than the fact that he is just, I don't know, like really devoted to his dad, who is not great. But so I actually probably will read the next one. I will give her that. I will read it.
I will read
to see where it goes.
I'm curious because Reckless was a mess. There was no plot in Reckless.
Yeah.
What I remember from Reckless are the sweet moments that were in there that I was like, aw, cute. But back to June, I read The Quit List by Katie Bailey, which was a win. Jax made it onto my top 10 of book boyfriends. I loved him. He was spectacular. And Katie Bailey writes a really good closed door romance, good tension, and just enough like zest to keep you.
I always say that zest is like the tension, like the brush of the hands, those types of things. That's zesty to me. And then when you get into spices, like
Details.
yes, of sex. So
Of sex.
So yeah, did that. Read Ashes in the Star Curse King. Made a mistake because I waited too long to read it. I did not like it.
I have made a terrible mistake.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
That was me with Ashes in the Star Curse King. What a bummer, you know?
Yeah.
If you need a nice, spicy contemporary romance, read Forbidden King by Laura Pavlov. 'Cause that was definitely like a sick. I think I read it in a day and I was just like, I feel miserable. This is exactly what I need. I read Empire of Storms through an audiobook. Everything else that month was a reread. Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. That one's a winner. Our Secret Song by Emily Childs. The man in that also made my top 10 boyfriends list.
Ooh.
Fourth Wing and Funny Story, which that was the second time I read it.
You read it for book club?
Yeah, I read it again for book club. And I listened to the audio mostly that time. That's a good audiobook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a good listen.
My June.
Yeah, what did you read in June?
The Ashes and the Star Curse King.
Thanks for reading those books with me.
That was fun. I mean,
I enjoy reading with you, even when the books are just kind of meh.
I know. That one that was a reread. I liked them less the second time around. It's really crazy how some books you can like more. Fourth Wing I liked more. Iron Flame I liked more. But like some books you like less. And that one I didn't like as much.
This is true.
Trial of a Sun Queen and Rule of the Aurora King. Those fall in line of I didn't love the book, but yet I still go on. My heart will go on.
Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
Every time you just continue on the series that may not deserve to be continued, you just sing that.
Just sing the Titanic
That's the
song.
vibe.
Those ones went crazy on TikTok. Like a lot of people really liked them, and I didn't like the first one, but someone's like, oh, the second one gets better, and it did. I just I'm not here for The Bachelor meets fantasy, which is what it was. And I actually just don't like The Bachelor in general. So if that is your vibe, you might like it.
Interesting.
The FMC I wanted to kick in the face. So
Moving on.
So one thing I did really like about it is she is a person of color.
Love
that representation. Are we still in June?
We're still in June, baby girl.
Zodiac Academy 8. Again, we just got through that. Fourth Wing and Iron Flame were the rereads that actually hit better the second time. So that was good. And then going into July, because I know we just talked about Powerful, Powerless. I did the tandem read for Powerful and Powerless.
Bless you.
No one needs to read Powerful. Absolutely not.
I'm so glad that I didn't even crack it open.
No. Well, I like those characters. They did not need a book.
She dies.
Yes, and it's really weird to tandem read it, to be super honest. Zodiac Academy 8.5.
Again, the
Audible.
0.5s just done.
And it was told from, it's called Beyond the Veil, so like everyone who died gets like a, which I actually kind of liked in some ways, but it could have been written in. But that book already has, or that series already has way too many POVs. So just in general, not needed. Oof. Fate of the Sun King, Kill for Me, Kill for You. Guys, I tried.
Thriller.
I don't even remember a lot of it because that was a book club book. And I remember going to the book club and then they started talking. I was like, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. And so I tried my best.
Our friend who loves thrillers, though, said that was one of the best that she's read this year. So if thrillers are your thing, Kill for Me, Kill for You.
But it was not my thing.
Not my thing. I didn't even read it.
So if it is your thing, you do your thing. Here's where it ended very, very well for me. And probably another top of the year was Spark of the Everflame, Glow of the Everflame, and Heat of the Everflame.
You read all those in July?
Yeah.
That was a good era for you.
It was, because I was such in a book rut. And that's why I tried a thriller, because I was like, maybe I just need a palate cleanser, like something completely different. I mean, all three of those books are big, but like Heat of the Everflame is huge. And I can't believe I literally finished it the very last day of July. I loved them, and I know I recommended them to you, which you read a couple, and I really, really wanted to jump in because I think, was it July 31st?
That was when it was supposed to come out.
The fourth book was supposed to come out, and then it got delayed again. And you know, I'm here for Pencole. I'm here to support you, but could you let me know when the next book is coming? Just from someone who's had a hard book year. That'd be nice.
Bless your heart.
Because that really probably was the highlight of my year in books, or one of them, I guess.
That was a high point. I remember us like walking through Sam's Club talking about those books.
Mom goals. So what was your July like?
July was like my insane month. I don't know if I've ever read 12 bucks. I don't know if I've ever read 12 books in a single month. That was a lot.
That is,
but it was good. Was it? Yeah, no, it was really good. But I did read like my least favorite of the year,
which was,
I don't like to poop on fanfic. Okay, because they don't go through the same process. But it just wasn't for me. It was really dark, and it was hard, and I didn't care for the ending. But from like a writing standpoint, brilliant.
Okay,
her world, great. And her world meaning like her version of Harry Potter. There's a lot of it that was brilliant to me. It was so dark.
And that's okay, because we all know you're not like the darkest.
Not dark, but I like my trauma.
You like heaviness more than darkness.
Yeah, but that was like psychotic, psychological. Theodore Knott is like crazy in that book. Also, Barty Crouch Jr. I'll never look at him the same, because he was a monster in that book.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like my kind of book, but if it's yours, mazel tov.
And like I said, I try not to judge my fan fictions the same as a book, because they don't go through the same process or anything. And these are people's passion projects. And honestly, to the author of Secrets and Masks, your brain is a beautiful thing. And I would like, whoa, I'm in awe of you. That one was like 400,000 words long, so and just like intricate and detailed. And I'm just like, dang girl, what a talent, what a skill. I'm thankful for the fanfic authors' sacrifice and service, because they're keeping my Kindle loaded with free books. I did read Legendborn by Tracy Dion, which was that was a good one. So different, BIPOC. Love that.
That's on my
The
TBR.
magic system was so interesting. I have the second one geared up to read. Read Reckless. We already pooped on that. After Secrets and Masks, I did have to go touch grass. I was just kind of like, okay, girlfriend, you need to like get back in touch with reality a little bit. So I read a nonfiction, and it was actually one of my top reads of the year. I'd say The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. Just a series of essays about random things in life that he then gives a 5-star rating at the end of the essay. He ranks like Canadian geese and like different bands and food and places to visit. Like, it's hilarious. His writing is so brilliant.
It makes sense. It doesn't seem like it makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense.
I'm
He's
sure it
just
makes
rating
sense.
things that are like happening out in the world right now. It's
Can you
so
imagine
funny.
if someone like just went around rating things like
It's like
those
4
geese,
stars.
4 stars. The color could have been better.
Then I jumped right into like a contemporary romance binge. I read Play Along by Liz Tom Ford. Liz Tom Ford, the characters that you write are so incredible. The men, top notch. That's all I have to say. The spice,
Is it though?
the spice makes me a little uncomfy, but that's because of my own threshold. Sometimes it's just a lot.
Yeah.
But
I've never read her
the
books, so I don't know.
characters are so good. So good.
Is it like you feel like you're in the room with them?
They're just
situation?
like good people. Good
Well, I mean,
people, well fleshed
good people
out.
need sex.
Well fleshed out, like just so good. Yes, there was lots of sex. Okay. The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. She's a winner for me.
Okay.
I really like her. A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston, which I really enjoyed. And it kind of gave Hermione vibes a little bit because like the main character had like white blonde hair. The main male character. You don't find that often anymore. They're all like tall, dark, and handsome.
Contemporary.
Give me a blonde. Turtles All the Way Down. That's a YA by John Green.
Nice.
That one was fun.
Okay.
Nice to kind of like
Yeah.
my toes back in the YA world a little bit. I love his books. He's such a good writer.
I like YA sometimes because it doesn't rely on smut. It doesn't rely on kind of those emotions. Not saying that there isn't a world for that. It's nice to read every once in a while because it is fully centered on a plot.
Yes. And the coming of age and the representation of all different kinds of experiences and things that happen as a youth. I read another Hermione. That was a good one. Rosemary for Remembrance.
Are we still in July?
It was a big month. Okay?
Girlfriend.
And then I started Spark with the Everflame. August. All the Young Dudes. Need I say more?
That's a top 3 for you now.
Yep. Glow of the Everflame. Done and Dusted. Artificial Wisdom. A Hermione. Reread Bones. Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. If you need some Regency fantasy.
Is that one I would like?
Maybe. It doesn't have a lot of depth to it, but it's interesting.
I'll read the synopsis.
It's interesting. So August was good. Kind of back to like a good pace.
You're getting back into it. My August was good as well. Zodiac Academy 9. And because I had reread all the other ones, I really like paced it, and it's big, it's thick. So I finally finished it. I might go back and reread books 3 through maybe 6, like in a few years, like not anytime soon. But yeah, I will never read 7 through 9 ever again. I'm glad I know how it ends though. One book that surprised me a lot, and this was me trying to get out of fantasy. I mean, sci-fi is kind of like a buddy to fantasy in my mind because it is still
they are
fantasy.
like twins.
I read Red Rising, and if you follow us on social media, you know that I loved it. I liked Red Rising, but I loved Golden Sun. That's a 5-star read for me. It's equal parts devastating to funny to there's people dying left and right. There's stakes. There's a lot to it. The first one took a little bit for me to get into because it kind of felt like reading a journal, like, and then this happened. In that sense, Pierce Brown really picked it up and stepped it up in books 2 and 3. And I finished Morning Star this morning. I'm still digesting it.
Okay, you didn't even tell me that. What?
I'm bad.
Is it because you're still digesting it?
I'm still digesting it.
Okay.
And I last night started tearing up. I need you to read it. I think if you like sci-fi, especially Ender's Game, I think you need to read at least the 3, and we can maybe do an episode about it or just chat about it because I just need to talk about it, but I don't really know who to talk about it with. So loved those. Bones, we reread Bones. because we wanted to.
It was for book club too.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was for book club. And again, just we'll always sing praises to that. Can't wait for Fangs coming out soon. Assistant to the Villain, Apprentice to the Villain, we've already talked about. Those were, it ended on a
That
low
was a
for
low
me.
note for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a cute idea. Such a cute idea.
It would have worked in a novella form. If that had been a novella, I think it would have been great because I was in it for the first 20%. And then there was like nothing happening in the rest and it was just rough. That was like a real low read for me. That was a 1 star. Those don't happen all that
I gave
often.
Assistant to the Villain 3. And I maybe even 3.5 because I gave it a little half C for like creativity.
I gave it 1 star because I skimmed to finish.
I don't think I hated it as much as you did.
No, you didn't. So far in September, I've read Assistant to the Villain Guild, which is the first book in the Plated Prisoner.
Yes.
Plated Prisoner series.
I love that series.
Heavy. But
Heavy.
good.
I knew you'd like it.
You nailed it. You nailed it, girl.
Which this was one of the rare times where I caught Julie in the middle of a mood read because I think I had texted you and I was like, just so you know, this is on Kindle Unlimited now. I don't know why my Valley Girl is coming out this episode, but I sent that over to you and I was like, we had talked about it, but just so you know, it's on Kindle Unlimited right now. So if you're going to snag it, maybe snag it now. And then you read it and I was like, oh, and you had texted me about, I can't even remember the first question, but it was about, was it the harem or something?
I don't know, something about them being called saddles, probably, because that's such a strange term.
It is. It is not great, but it's supposed to be not great.
I think I texted you about the ribbons.
Yes,
We've talked,
ribbons.
Yeah, we've talked in depth about the ribbons.
I really like it. It's fantasy, but it does have a lot of trauma, like your Manacled, like your heavier style
It's
of books.
definitely heavier, and I would check the trigger warnings definitely before
for
you
sure.
read, because that would be hard. The men are just scum. I know it's gonna get better. Yeah, you caught me. You caught me at a good
did.
time with that book.
I did.
That was a win. I was a little scared because I was like, I'm doing this. I'm reading it. I got probably like 30% in, and then I looked at Goodreads and I saw it had a 3.59. I am a snob, and I will own that. But often I only read books if they're like 3.9 or higher on Goodreads because it helps me sift through like. I don't know. I just feel like it helps me make sure I'm not going to, like, for lack of a better term, waste my time.
I don't often find a correlation between your top picks with incredibly highly starred books on Goodreads.
I should look that up.
It would be interesting to
I should see.
And I knew you'd like it. This is why I still think that you would like Book of Azrael given a second chance, but because of all the trauma.
Guys, it's so... Oh, why? What is it? What is it? We'll figure it out eventually. But yeah, that one just hit. I finished it and I was like, 3.59? What's happening here?
Do you ever look at how many though? Because it's like an Amazon review,
No,
right?
but like I went in and read reviews after I finished it, and it was just a really hard read for a lot of people. Like it was just like...
Do you think maybe the trigger warnings, or because it's a fantasy book and the trigger warnings aren't as prevalent as maybe your dark romance, as your, maybe other things, maybe it's not what people expected.
Well, and just like the men are awful. Like they're all very manipulative. I saw someone describe them as rapey.
I mean, kind of.
Which is not wrong, but I think it was just a hard read for people.
In book 1, especially.
Yes. I know it's going to
worst.
get better, but she's like in it in book 1.
It gets better and then it gets worse.
Of course. Of course.
It does.
After that, I read Prisoner of Azkaban. It was a reread. That was either the 4th or 5th time I've read it. And the first time I read it since I finished All the Young Dudes. And oh my gosh, what an experience to read that book after All the Young Dudes. Blew my socks off because Miss Kingbean, 89, if you're listening, if you are out there, how did you do it? Because the way that everything lined up so perfectly with Prisoner of Azkaban, and just like feeling like I know their actual backstories. There were things that they said that I was like, All the Young Dudes? What? So that was like that was a freaking awesome experience.
The glow you emit when you talk about it.
So good.
All the Young Dudes.
I am currently reading Wild Love by Elsie Silver. And I think I have Elise Myers to thank for that because
Love her.
Elsie Silver is all over. I see her books all the time, but Elise Myers has been putting out reviews on YouTube lately of books that she's reading, and she raved about it. And I was like, okay, time to try Elsie Silver.
Okay.
And I'm enjoying it. It's been good. Nice. And I'm also reading Blue Sisters by Coco Melors. And I'm glad that I'm also reading a fluff because that one's just heavy. And it's beautiful and beautifully written and such a beautiful representation of life with siblings, especially like sisters and dealing with drumroll trauma. But
shocker.
It's good so far. It's just taking me a little more time because I've got to make sure I'm in the right headspace to read it because, you know, the mentals aren't always top tier, you know?
Sometimes books take you out of your comfort zone for you to grow. On that note, my September, we're pretty far into it and I've only read 2 books.
Are you sure that we're pretty far into September? We're not, well, at the time of filming this, we're not in double digits yet.
That's true. Yeah.
So give yourself some cred. Okay.
Yeah.
But what 2 have you read?
I have read Morning Star as of this morning. I need to sit with my thoughts on that one a little bit. House of Bane and Blood, which I texted you and I was like, I don't know about this one. Like, it's a 3-star so far. It did pick up, might be 3.5 though. I don't think it picked up that much.
Okay.
I will continue on. I don't know if I'd recommend it though. It's like a weird in between. I think this one started as a TikTok thing as well.
Okay.
It's the one that's like Peaky Blinders and that world is really cool. And there's not like a ton of world. No, that's not true. What gets me is it's hard to keep track of these world building items in a Peaky Blinders setting. And it's like all of a sudden this thing that you didn't hear of at all before. So like it could have used maybe a little more editing in my opinion, but the premise is good. And I really like the main guy and the main girl. She's not
great.
No, she's not what I expected, I guess.
Okay.
So like a lot of people are out here hating on FMCs, myself included, because I didn't like a couple of them that I had read this earlier this year, but I like her, which is funny because she's like a gang mob heiress. And,
interesting.
And you could easily just like not like that type of character. One thing I do like about her, she has 4 brothers, which I can relate to because I have many. So some of the stuff that was very briefly mentioned, I was like, yeah, my brothers would do that too.
Yeah.
Would sell me off to another rival. Good riddance.
Get rid of her.
So that was
That's your September so far.
That's my September so far.
And that's your year in review.
I really want to read All the Young Dudes and I can't decide when to do it. I told myself I was going to wait till October when the vibes were right, you know, when we're vibing. And then you obviously were like, hey, maybe read it before. And I was like, okay. So I've been trying to like get in the right headspace, but there's too many books. There's so many books. And this is where I really struggle as someone who has a list.
Yes.
And I go down the list for the most part.
You go down the list.
I go down to the bottom of my Kindle library and I go up to the one I haven't read yet.
What is that like?
What is the world like where you are?
What is that like?
So, I mean, sometimes I'm a mood reader. Like sometimes I'm like, not feeling that one, but I could do this one, you know, like, but not the way you do. I definitely have a list and I stick to it.
I have like suggestions. I add books to my want to read on Goodreads, and then every once in a while I scroll through it, and then I kind of keep a list in my phone of like, maybe these ones I should read before, but then books pop up and I'm like, I'm going to read that. What books are on your list for the rest of the year?
My top 3 book series was A Fate of Wrath and Flame. The 4th and final just came out. And I really want to read it, but that requires 3 books of rereading.
You don't have to reread it.
But it's been a few years. Here's the thing. It's been a few years.
I'm just making it very clear.
No, I know I don't have to. And on some of these books, especially 3 stars and under, like, I shouldn't reread it.
Did you just make that rule after reading Zodiac Academy again?
I should have. That one I will reread because I just love the first one so much. So I am excited to get my hands into that. What the Library Hides comes out in November, which is the sequel / final installment of What the River Knows, which was like the mummy vibe. I liked the first book, but that epilogue had me in a chokehold. And that's a book that I literally like took my Kindle out to my husband, whom I think I have done this with this book and Bones. And I was like, what? What? Like, oh my gosh. So I'm really excited to see where that one goes. I want to read The Road of Bones by Demi Winters.
Okay.
That one is highly suggested. I did to jump into that one. A Shadow of Gods by John Gwynne.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a high fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I love fantasy and I like high fantasy.
Got it. Yeah. They are different.
The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Another
kind of classic high fantasy.
Yep. The Crown of Oaths and Curses, which has been in my TBR since May. Because I took it to the cabin with us in May and I never got around to it. And then All the Young Dudes. A little shout out to maybe some things going into next year. Iron Gold, Dark Age, Lightbringer are they're in the Red Rising family, but they're not like the main 3 trilogy. I do want to continue on. I think I might need a break from sci-fi for a minute. So
It is a little dense.
Dense is the right word for that. Gold and Goldfinch is another one. I want to reread those, and I haven't read Gold, and Goldfinch comes out later this month. So
Right on.
yeah,
You're prepped.
I am holding back on my reads. Like The Heartless Hunter, I really want to read,
Oh, yeah.
but I'm not going to read it till February.
I am stuck with that one because it's a book club book for October.
That one might be a good October read because
Yeah.
it's about witches. Witches.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I've got other things on the list.
That is what I'm excited to get my claws into in the last quarter of the year.
Here's mine. The Unmaking of June Farrow
Oh, yeah.
is on my list. The Plated Prisoner series, which we just talked about. I need to read Heat of the Everflame. I am going to read Words of Radiance, which is the second book in the Stormlight Archive. I'm going to do that for my husband. I'm halfway through it. I just had to put it down. I'll pick it back up. I'd love to read the other 2, but they are so big and like they're not bingeable. And so I don't get the dopamine. But I can read them with another book at the same time. Anyways, I will read Words of Radiance. Clara and the Sun is a book that my friend bought for me when I was with her a couple weeks ago, and it's one of her favorites. So I'm going to read that one. I want to finish Dune. I just started it, and it's another one that I put down, but I want to pick it back up. Then I do have a Hermione and another Marauders fanfic that are kind of on board.
Are they long?
Yeah.
This is my problem with
one of them
fanfics.
is. The Marauders one is huge, but I've heard it's one of the best, and it focuses a little bit more on Regulus, which I want to get more of his backstory, his unofficial backstory. So the ones that I have on my list, we'll see, is I Will Make You Proud. That's the Hermione. And then the Marauders one is Crimson Rivers, which, I don't know. There's been life before Marauders fanfic, and now there's life after, and it's quite the life. Sometimes I get overwhelmed with how much there is to consume that I'm just like, but if I spend all my time reading this, I'm going to miss something.
And this is where, so like my therapist, I was telling you earlier, gave me like the lists. This is how it all started. This is how my TBR list starts.
Yeah.
This is my therapist. It was like, just start with a list, like write down everything you think about and get to it when you get to it.
When you get to it.
And so then I can go in and cross it off. And that's how I feel like I make progress.
The TBR, it's always growing.
TBR.
I know. That's how, I mean, I look at my Goodreads want to read section and I'm just like, good heavens.
Heavens.
But
to
I
Betsy.
did start making like a list on my phone of just like, okay, here's what's on deck. Here's what, like,
Do you ever like
I would like to read.
stay?
I'll show you. I have like some of them.
No, I've seen it.
Yeah,
I've seen
they're
your
checked
notes.
off. I think I'm about halfway on the one I made
Air
earlier
Awakens
this year.
is on that list. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the list. Look at the To Be Read. To Be Read on the To Be Read podcast. I would think we just filled people's TBRs up.
I hope so. In a good way.
In a good way. It's been a good year. Yours
Has
is
been a good year.
Has it been a good year for you?
No. Well, yes and no. I would say the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Not a lot of in between. I haven't read a lot. Like I haven't given 3 stars to a lot of things this year. It was like 2 and under or 4 to 5. It's kind of rare that I give a 5-star, but
yeah. Just kind of all over the place.
it's just not been like the most eventful, I guess I should say. Did I have a good time? Yeah.
May the rest of the year fill the cup that still needs filling.
Yeah,
In whatever way. Let's scratch the itches and read what we want to read.
Yeah.
Filled with joy, happiness, and all the in between. And trauma.
Because Julie is nothing without her trauma.
I'm attached to it. It's mine. My precious.
Well, just remember, everybody, that books are for everyone. Books are for you. Keep growing that TBR, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.
Bye.